Welcome to the Evolution Partners podcast, where I talk with the world's leading thinkers, planners, and doers who are helping to build great companies in their own way. We learn how the work they're doing is creating an impact and get to know a little bit more about them and what makes them tick. This episode is brought to you by Evolution Partners, where we help leaders to confidently build enduring great companies using our proven, structured, strategic planning process that ensures you build and execute the right plan. Check us out at evolutionpartners.com.au. Also, you can check out our books, Made to Thrive, outlining how to be a great CEO, as well as Onboarded, which is about making your new hires more effective faster. Greg Gladman is a doer. He is the Managing Director of Sales, Leadership and Performance, or SLP, with offices in Australia and the USA. SLP help companies build a sales A-team and a sales process with training, coaching and recruiting to make the sales function thrive. Greg's OMG assessments are the most comprehensive, data-driven that I've ever seen, and they've assessed almost 2.8 million salespeople and over almost 34,000 companies. You can find Greg at saleslp.com. Greg, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me along.
Perhaps we could start, if you could tell us your definition of a salesperson. Then what's the job of a salesperson and the job of a sales manager?
Yeah, for sure. Look, it's interesting when the first thing that often pops to mind when people think of a salesperson is someone trying to, shove something else down someone's throat. We use an analogy or a terminology around a salesperson being a trusted advisor, someone who's able to have a great conversation to find a compelling reason for somebody to switch across or to buy the product, and a compelling reason why that is you or your product. So really that trusted advisor who's great at asking questions and being able to influence somebody to make the right purchasing decision.
Beautiful. So the job of a salesperson is to find that compelling reason and to influence them, yeah?
Yeah, correct. And it's being able to try and find out, what their current situation or scenario is, what might be the pain or frustration or the gain that they're trying to chase, and then trying to see what product or service offering might be a fit to help them with that problem or help them to achieve that outcome. And the other thing too is a great salesperson knows how to disqualify, so that if they actually find a prospect that's not the right fit, that they can actually just call it out and not waste time with someone who's either not going to buy or the product is not the right fit. It's the ability to ask great questions and really find the right solution for the problem they're looking at.
Okay, so you guys work in, listeners may be thinking that you guys work in IT or industrial sales or B2B sales. What's the breadth of industries that you work in from A to Z, kind of without listing them, but give us an example of the breadth.
Sure. For sure. So look, our breadth of who we work with is very wide. So I would say business to business, pretty much any type of business to business interaction. And we also do a lot of what I would call business to high-end consumer, business to high C. So, and look, to put a figure on it, it might be over $1,000 spend. So we might have a telecommunications client where they're coming in and buying a $2,000 iPhone and trying to buy internet and a phone plan, or it could be through to a large SaaS company doing a really high-end solution. It might be $1 million sale. So B2B in any way, shape or form, or high-end business to consumer.
Okay, so there is a point at which at the bottom end it might not be worth it, but if I'm selling $1,000 shoes, which some people might be, there could be a case that the sales process can and the salesperson and the training and everything could be quite worth it.
100%. And I would say there's very few businesses where the process won't work or won't make sense. It often comes down to, in retail, people seeing their staff as transient or not wanting to invest in their development. So that's probably more why we steer away from the lower end of retail, is that they won't invest the money to try and upskill their team. But look, we have had examples where we're working in a retail environment where the spend has been between $500 and $1,000, And if we can actually get the conversion rates for customers walking in to sort of go from 25% to 40%, we're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars of additional revenue or profit that can come through. So it's very rare that we can't help them. It's just whether or not they're prepared to invest in those people that they sometimes see as quite transient or casual employees. Yeah.
Okay, great. So that was the first part. Now, what is the job of a sales manager?
Yeah, so look, we would say a sales manager is, we have a language now. The sales manager is that super coach inside the business. So that they actually they have to know how to sell. Very hard to coach and hold someone accountable and motivate them to do the right things if you don't know what to do yourself. So look, there's a rare exception to that. But I would say that most of the time they actually need to know how to use a consultative selling process and have the art of asking questions. So they need to know that piece, but they don't need to be the best salesperson in the team. They need to be able to have a look at, like a coaching type sort of setup where they're actually watching what's happening and being able to spot to see what's different around the real world versus the best practice that's in play. And so being able to, the art of asking questions to actually help that salesperson to see what they're doing well, but also the areas for improvement. So for us, coaching is probably the key just part of the description. We'd also say healthy accountability. So not being a micromanager, but actually, still empowering the team to map out what their ideal week is and what the things are that are giving them the best return on time, but be able to hold them accountable to those activities so they don't sort of veer off and go down a pathway that's not a good return on time. We'd also say that they have the ability to motivate the team. And, sales is a tough gig. There's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of, it's probably one of the only jobs where you can do everything perfectly and still not get a sale. So, being able to spot when the team are having those sort of, down days or sometimes weeks or months, and being able to try to motivate them to push you outside the comfort zone, give them that encouragement, that support to get them where they need to be. And then the last sort of key thing that we find is that they have to be able to manage a pipeline. They need to be that person that can do what we call a pipeline flush and actually go through a pipeline and challenge it in a productive way that's making sure that the individuals are making the best use of time. So they're probably the main hats that we see as a sales manager. But more often than not, we're having to get them to see the value in doing that and not sort of, throwing on the boots and running out there trying to do the sales themselves.
Well, we spoke about this in the chat before we started recording. It's my opinion that sales managers, within reason, who put on the boots and go out and sell is a bit of a crime, and the one that should be punished accordingly. Now, if you only got two salespeople and a sales manager, they can't be a full-time manager. But too often, entrepreneurs, in my experience, justify having a sales manager going out and selling, and often competing against their direct reports, and not spending enough time actually coaching, training, hiring, holding people accountable, doing all the key parts of the sales management role. I mean, is that your experience?
100%. I would say I'm yet to see a company in the last 15 years that we couldn't help them to justify a full-time sales manager once they hit 5 full-time sales people. It's look, there are probably some businesses where they may not economically be able to afford to, and it might be a slight hybrid role where they might be looking after some key accounts while managing a team. But if a company is prepared to invest in the right type of manager to do all the things we spoke about earlier, I'm yet to see a company that hasn't got a return on investment from doing that. Because if the manager is pulling on the boots and running out to do the sales, and they're ignoring their sales team, there's only so much. I always say to managers when we're coaching, look, you can probably outsell 2 mediocre salespeople, but you probably won't outsell 3, and you've got no way you're going to outsell 4 of them. So your actual time you put into coaching and developing them to do and follow a best process is going to be far more valuable.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I'm interested that you say 5. I look to you as an expert, not myself. I would typically say if you've got just as a hypothetical model, if you've got 10 salespeople, the job of the salesperson is to make them 10% better, and then you can easily justify it as a hypothetical. But really the job of the sales manager is to get the sales team to hit or exceed budget, right? So what do you see a typical, what would you be your go-to single KPI for a sales manager?
Ooh. That is a really good question. No one's ever asked me that before, Brad. Look, I would say, look, I would say actually that the amount of time they're spending coaching their team against that best practice. You can have every dashboard in the world around, number of calls and visits and proposals and conversion rates. But if they're measuring all the data, but they're not using that data to have informed coaching conversations with their team, it's a little bit pointless.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It is. It really is. Because without the coaching, without the training, then the salespeople, which is the job of the manager, the salespeople are learning on the job with prospects, which is sort of not what we want, right? Because they're never going to learn. They're just going, oh, they didn't buy. They didn't probably want it. All right. So in my experience, many business leaders don't see sales as a profession. They just see it as some amateur hacks who are having a go, or whatever it might be. They pay people salaries to sell, but their mindset on selling means that they end up with salespeople who don't stand a chance. What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there are certain. If I look at the US side of our business, there's definitely more of a sales being a profession or taken a lot more seriously. Yeah. It's something that people aspire to be. There's still a lot of negative sort of head talk in Australia and New Zealand around sales. Being a salesperson is almost like a dirty word. Look, I would love if there was some way that there could be some sort of formal university degree around being a salesperson. I think there's a couple of universities that have a bit of a crack at it, but I don't think anyone's hit the secret sauce there yet. And I think there's just so many different variations around, what a salesperson, can look and be and sound like, that it's very hard for them to, create something. I've not seen any program with some credentials behind it that gets me excited.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. I mean, you live really, really deep in this niche, right? And so you take a critical eye, perhaps, let's say. My counter to the people with that perspective might be who don't hold the sales profession in a high regard might be, well, why do you think they get paid the most in many organisations? Because it's a tough job. And it probably leads into my next question. How do you define a sales A player?
Yeah, so look, that's something that we live and breathe. And when we look at what is a sales A player, we have three different sort of things we look at. We have what we call sales mindset, where we're looking at that salesperson's desire or passion to be a high-performing salesperson and their commitment to do what it takes to be successful. They've got to have that motivation or that real will to get out of bed each day and to do the tough things inside the role to be successful. They've got to be fairly resilient. They've got to be able to to bounce back after some of the tough things that happen inside the role. Yeah. And so first of all, that will to sell or the sales mindset is critical. We have a thing we call sales DNA, and this is things that can pop up that can stop somebody from performing at their peak. I often call these the hidden weaknesses, or things that the salespeople are probably not aware of that can stop them being successful. I often refer to this also like a handbrake. So you can have a sports car, you've got the handbrake on, it's not going to go very fast. Yeah. And look, the last piece of the puzzle is that knowledge, skills, or tactical skills. Is they actually need to know what good looks like and be really good at having consultative selling conversations, being able to differentiate value, and most importantly, tie the solution back to the compelling reason to buy or to change. And that's where we find the difference between a lot of B players and A players, is you can have someone that looks like an A player and they'll do all the front end piece right, and they'll get to the solution stage and they'll just say the same to every single prospect. And that's when the objections pop in, that's when the think it overs pop in, and that's where the conversion rates start to flounder.
Yeah, yeah. So that's an excellent answer. And knowing what I know a little bit about your process. All of those things, like the will to sell, are not just words that you came up with on the spot in response to it. Like, these form a really deep part. All of those aspects of your assessments of candidates, A and B salespeople who are existing, to identify
Yes.
why they are or are not successful. Do you have a simpler definition? That's a great definition. Do you have how do you define a sales A player?
If I was to break that down around, as a business owner,
Yeah.
what would I look for? I would say they're good at building rapport and trust. They can speak well, speak with confidence. They can ask great questions. They can really uncover someone's current pain or frustration.
Yeah.
And they're able to, to have sort of catchball conversation to be able to sculpt up a solution, so they can actually position, your product or service offering back to that person in a way that it makes sense for them to buy it.
Why is it so hard to find sales A players, do you think?
Look, I think there are so few companies that spend money on sales training and development.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, we find a lot of CEOs that say, well, I don't have to spend money on sales training. I'm employing them to sell. They should know what to do. So, and the fact that there is no university degree, there is no formal program to go off and study to be a salesperson. A lot of people just learn on the fly. So, most of the businesses we work with, the salesperson has been taught by the guy who was leaving the role, who was unsuccessful. And hey, here's my territory, here's who they are, here's how you sell to them. And then the manager might have time to spend a little bit of time with them here and there. So it's actually self-perpetuating that we actually have, people coming into a role and following the bad habits of the person who was unsuccessful before them.
Yeah. No process, no formal training structure within the company, especially to learn the way that we do things. And I mean, many leaders in my experience look to experience. They say, we want to hire a salesperson who's experienced, and it's like a coverall. It's like, if we do that, it's a get out of jail free card. We're fine if they've got experience. But that other company might have a different strategy. They might have a different marketing plan. They might have a different sales process or CRM, and their product might be unique in the market or have a unique selling proposition. So this experience isn't necessary. It's a nice indicator, but it's not necessarily a sole indicator, right?
Look, one of the things that we sort of help our clients with when they're going through the recruitment process is, experience and background is interesting, but it's not critical. Yeah. And that can be a real twist of the brain for some clients, because you can have someone who's come from a market-leading company where they've got a never-ending flow of leads coming through that are pre-qualified, and they're just picking up the phone to take the order.
Yeah.
And being the best salesperson in Australia for a company like that often means they're the best order taker. You take that human being out of that business and you put them into a tier 2 or a tier 3 business where they have to sing for their supper every day and they have to light up the phones to try and get enough interest for a conversation. They are going to dismally fail.
Yeah.
Dismally fail.
Yeah.
And we see this time and time again where, small to mid-sized companies chase the brand name of the company that this salesperson's worked for, unknowingly setting themselves up to fail.
Yeah. And what percentage of salespeople do you think don't make budget?
That's interesting. I would say across, we've probably worked with a few hundred clients over the last few years, and if we're looking at the companies that are coming to us for support, which is probably might be a skewed perspective of that, given that they're coming to us because they're feeling that they need help.
Yeah.
But I would say over 30 to 40% of salespeople are not hitting budget. I did see a recent article that was, I think it was by Gallup a few months ago, that was saying that globally, when they assessed 20, I think it was 10,000 businesses, that those statistics were a lot higher, up sort of 50% plus. But it really, for us, it really depends on who the sort of company that's coming to us. They usually have a higher percentage of people who are not hitting target.
Yeah.
Sometimes the target itself is a challenge because it's probably too low. We have a lot of times where companies come to us and the target that they have for the salesperson, they struggle to get an ROI from that, the labour cost of the salesperson because the target's been too low. So there's times where a business comes to us and says, oh, yeah, we've got 80% of people hitting target. But then I look at the target and do the reverse engineering on the numbers, and they're probably going to struggle to actually get an ROI from that salesperson.
Do you have a go-to ROI, or is it specific to industries? As in, if I'm going to pay the salesperson $100,000, they need to get $500,000 GP or something like that?
Yeah, so look, we do. And every business is a little different for how they like to slice and dice that.
Yeah.
But I would say bare bones minimum, whatever the bait, like let's say $100,000 salary, I'd want to see them bring in at least $250,000 in GP dollars to justify their job. And then anything over and above that, you can start to throw some commission or some bonuses from that point onwards. Yeah. If we look at most companies that we're working with and setting them up to have this sort of thriving environment, it's not uncommon to see that sitting at 4, 5, 6. Some SaaS companies and IT companies are 10 plus. A lot of that comes down to what's the dollar spend for the deal and what's the sales cycle of the deal. There are times where we've had to actually help clients to automate a lot of the front end of their process because there's just not enough profit to have salespeople having these conversations with the team, and they're finding that out by default.
Yeah. I guess, so what we're hearing is sales is a profession. People underinvest in sales training and hiring the right salespeople, but the return is there, right? Probably more than, I wouldn't say more than any other function, but more than the average function. If you can get sales right, everything else can flow. Your sales assessments are probably the most comprehensive data driven about salespeople that I've come across. One of the things I love about the sales assessments is that rather than being a little bit like astrology, they're a little bit more hard, which is, yes, we recommend you hire this candidate, or no, we recommend that you don't. And then for all of these reasons, which is, a 10, 20-page report.
Yep.
What is the most often surprise for business owners when they first come across the data, the comprehensive data that you're providing them?
I think often when they first see the level of information that we can provide, and once they get to know us and what we're doing with them, the quality of the data, like how predictive the data is on real world, they're just blown away. I often get asked, how long do you know this person, or how long did you spend with this person to establish this? And it's a 45-minute assessment that looks at situational and scenario-based questions. So it takes away all the subjectivity. Look, we use a lot of psychometric and personality assessments. They're really good for helping a salesperson to understand how they can change their selling behaviour, but they don't predict sales success.
Yeah.
So when we're able to customise an assessment to any specific sales role, sales manager role, or sales leader role, we're actually being able to pinpoint in what are the characteristics that need to be there for that person to be recommended to go into the recruitment or the interview process. So look, we have clients that will come to us because they've heard about the tool at the last minute through a friend or a colleague, and they would have had a first interview with someone, they've fallen in love with them, and they'll do the assessment, and then we'll just find a stack of challenges and areas that are going to be a real problem for them. And often it can be hard to set aside the person that you've met being a great person who speaks well, and being able to dive into the detail around, will they actually do what it takes to be successful? So it's a little bit, can be a little bit overwhelming in the first little interaction, but once they see the quality of the data and how it helps them to have much better interviews with the candidates, it's all that goes away. I've had many a time where a CEO or an MD's rang me and said, look, thank goodness we used that assessment. When we actually asked those questions that you told us to off the back of the evaluation, it was 100% spot on. They had no idea how to prospect. They had no idea how to actually pick up the phone and do cold calling. We gave them a little script of ours and asked them to have a crack at it, and they nearly went to water. If we hadn't used the assessment, we would have hired them.
Yeah, wow.
And we hear that time after time from people just putting someone through a personality assessment and going, yep, they're a high I, they're really good with people, we're going to give them a sales role. And we use those tools. There's nothing wrong with the quality of the outputs of those tools, but they're not good for predicting sales success.
You mentioned earlier sales DNA. What is sales DNA?
Yeah, so look, we call these sort of hidden weaknesses is the language that we use, and these are the things that the salesperson may not be even aware of that's affecting their ability to perform at their peak. There's a few of them that we look for. We look for what we call, the need to be liked. So if you want your prospect to like you, it can sometimes or often stop you asking some of the tougher questions inside a sales process. It can make it hard to put price increases through. It can be hard to challenge something if they're saying something that doesn't sound correct. That having the friendship or wanting the person liking them is more important than actually asking those tough questions. So that is one that we see comes up quite a bit. We look for 46 different self-limiting beliefs that can actually stop somebody from performing at peak. And a lot of those tie back into the other competencies, but the one that we see most often is something we call ability to accept the think it over. So Brad, I love your product and the price looks great. Just give me 3 or 4 weeks to think about it. I'll call you back. Look, we all know in our heart of hearts that when we give someone a think it over as a buyer, that we have no intention of buying, but there's something happens in our brain as a salesperson when we hear love your product, love your price, the happy ears turn on, and then all of a sudden we're ready to buy. That is what we call our buy cycle. So how we buy is a direct correlation to how we let people buy from us. So we find that where there is that very slow buying process, that by default salespeople will let their prospects do that to them. We also look for how will they bounce back after rejection or getting a no. And so look, all these little things sort of help to paint a picture around, over and above the knowledge and skills, what do we have to work on to help them to use that knowledge and skill inside a sales interaction?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I missed one. Money weakness is another one that pops up quite a bit.
I was thinking about that one. Tell us, what is money weakness?
Look, money weakness is where it's uncomfortable to talk about money or budget. When it gets really bad, we find that the salesperson won't talk about the price. They'll email through the quote and hope for the best. Or we have had examples even recently where we had a client that had 2 staff members that had 0% money score. And when we actually dug a bit deeper and the manager started listening to some of their voice recordings of their sales conversations, right at the end when they were getting to presenting the solution, they say, look, we know we're the most expensive on the market, but... And then they start to do the value proposition after telling the customer that they're the most expensive on the market. And if we hadn't have highlighted that, they probably wouldn't have gone back and reviewed those conversations, and they wouldn't have known that was a gap for that person or those two people.
And that's why the sales manager's role is so important, because otherwise sales managers show up for years and years with a poor conversion rate or a conversion rate that could be better, and a whole range of challenges within their sales interactions that they don't even know about, perhaps, because there's no one who's training, coaching, holding them accountable. So many leaders promote good salespeople to be good sales managers. What problem can they create when they do this?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this one. I call it the transition from mate to manager. So often what it ends up delivering to the business is not what they hope for. it often actually gives them like two problems. They now don't have a sales manager because they've got a guy who was a great salesperson who doesn't know how to manage a team. They have no idea how to coach. They have no idea how to hold people accountable. And the people who they sat next to as their mate, they're now trying to manage, and they're trying to sort of, go argy-bargy around it and be as soft as they can, and they won't hold, it's harder to hold them accountable. So, they're not actually getting a high-performing sales manager. But secondly, they've just lost their best salesperson. So, and that's, and usually the person who's been promoted from best salesperson into manager might be outselling everybody else, 1.5 to 1 or 2 to 1, and then they've lost that great salesperson, and now they've actually promoted somebody into incompetence. I heard a very interesting comment the other day, which you might like, Brad. It's like if you're sitting on the plane, and they sort of shout out over the PA, look, I'm sorry guys, the pilot's not available to fly the plane today. Which one of the support staffs had the longest tenure with the business? Can you come and fly the plane? and I thought I really like that because it is so similar. It's not funny, and it really paints a mental picture around what you've just done with your business.
Management is a profession. Sales is a profession, and sales management, in my mind, it comes under the broad spectrum of management being a profession where people just get thrown into it, and they used to do a technical skill like sales or any other thing, and they've got no idea what to do. And then the most confused person in all of that is actually the sales manager, because the sales manager is like, why aren't these people just doing what they're supposed to do? I did it. I just went out there and got it done. It's a challenge. When should a sales manager be not selling and only managing the sales team?
Look, it does vary depending on the value and profit that's coming out of the business as far as what's the dollar sale in the sales cycle.
Sure.
But I would say probably once a team's getting to 5 or above, that you can justify a full-time sales manager.
Yeah.
We have had some instances where at 5 they might have a couple of key accounts or some sales responsibility. We do have some organisations too, Brad, where the sales manager does want to keep maybe 1 or 2 accounts so they can just keep abreast of what's happening in the industry or even in their own customer experience. But we'd say more than 5, you can fully justify full-time sales manager. I'm yet to see one. We haven't been able to help them to get that return on investment.
Someone I know is a salesperson, and they were saying they don't want the sales manager's job because they'll earn less. How much should a sales manager earn? Which is probably the wrong question for you, but what are your thoughts on that?
Look, a sales manager, I would say, generally speaking, in most of our companies where we're working with them, is probably getting 10 to 20 grand, more in base salary than the highest salesperson. It's pretty common.
Yeah.
But has uncapped earning potential based on performance. So once that they have metrics or targets that they have to hit around sales and profitability, we have some of our highest performing sales managers earn more than the CEO. And as in base and commission versus base, but a great CEO or a great business owner, where the commission or the bonuses is linked back to the profit, as long as that calculation's done properly, why wouldn't you want to cut a $300,000 check? If they're getting 5% of all profit above a certain threshold, and you're pocketing 95% of that, let's write them $1 million check, because the other 95% of that's going into your bank account.
Yeah, for sure. When should an entrepreneur or a leader keep a salesperson and work on them compared to letting them go?
Yeah, we've got this a lot. We've got that question a lot in the last 2 years with such a tight labour market.
Yeah.
And what I would say is if they're putting in the effort and the energy, like they're doing the activities, and they are, taking your coaching and your support and you're seeing improvements there might be times where they're not yet hitting the targets or the budget, But if they're moving, sort of progressively towards that, and they're engaging and they're responsive to coaching, absolutely, I'd say invest the time and money. If someone is pushing back and telling you that all these ideas and techniques are no good, and that they are not doing the activity, they're not actually making the phone calls and the visits, and not doing the things that need to happen, and they're not prepared to roll the sleeves up and do things differently, that's usually a pretty good telltale sign that person's on that pathway off the bus.
How long is too long for the first scenario that you've just outlined, where they're coachable, they're getting stuff done, they're on a good trajectory? How long is too long, do you reckon?
Depends on the length of the sales cycle, because sometimes the business might come in and say, look, this person's not working, they've got 3 months to sort this out. If your average sales cycle for your top performers is 12 months, 3 months is not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So we would, in those environments, we'd say, let's look at the quantity of activity, and is the quality of activity improving? And a good sales manager can tell that by doing joint calls, by doing pipeline reviews, by doing what we call a virtual joint call, where they can actually just ask questions and find out, was it a quality visit? And did they find a compelling reason why the prospect might change? And then a compelling reason why it might be to them. So even in those longer sales cycle organisations, you can tend to be able to spot that quicker. But I would say if you start doing a proactive coaching program with someone, you will know within 3 months whether they're going to make it or not.
Awesome.
They might not yet be at the figure, but you'll know whether they're going to get there.
So the book that I'm working on at the moment is called Bigger Isn't Better, Better is Better. And it's about building a better business. How would you describe a better business in your words?
I would say what we'd say is a better business is a business that is growing in a sustainable way, that is focused on getting the right type of clients coming through the door at a profit. Okay. And that they're not just chasing dollars and volume for ego, that they're actually chasing the right type of clients that they know will be there in 12, 24 months, 24, 48 months time.
Yeah.
And that there's a values alignment with the value proposition that you're providing is a direct fit for what they need. Because if you do that and do it well, it means that your sales team are not having to go out there and hunt new customers every year to grow. New customers every year is catapulting the sales, not treading water.
Lovely. Thank you. What's a book that you might recommend for our audience?
Look, the founder of Objective Management Group, a guy by the name of Dave Curlin, who's now since sold the business and is now working in his own sales organisation in the US, wrote a book called Baseline Selling. I think there is a little bit of obviously baseline selling being a link to baseball, so there is some American analogies that are popping up in that. But I think it's a really good book that just sort of shows that sort of psychology around the steps inside the process and how important it is to go around all the bases and not go from base 2 to base 4. One of the most common problems that we see with salespeople is they're having a conversation, they're asking some good questions. They find that little drop of blood in the water and they just try to jump on it and attack it and try to position the sale too soon. So for me, that's probably one of the books I read about 12 years ago. It's a nice, easy read. It's really easy to understand the importance of following a process, not taking shortcuts. And I think any business owner or salesperson will get some real value from that.
So I want to just quickly add to that, having read that book and understand that process, salespeople get a prospect, they have a chat with them, and then they say, this person wants to buy. So then they try to close rather than actually selling, which is all of the things that you said at the beginning of the call, uncovering the pain, understanding the decision-making process, a whole range of components that mean that the person is willing to buy. So thank you. That is a great book, Baseline Selling. How can people learn more about you and your business?
Look, feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. We post a lot of content and information on there that we get a lot of great feedback from clients and prospects that it's really helpful just to position their mind around sales. Of course, you can jump on our website, and if you want to learn more about us and who we are, more than happy to chat to any of your listeners at any stage, Brad. And again, as per what we just spoke about, we're not always the right fit for every business. So the process that we go through is we'll have a great, authentic conversation and work out whether we're a fit or not.
So that's saleslp.com.
That's correct.
And on LinkedIn, it's Sales LP, or what is it on is it a company or you?
Both, but probably if you probably best to follow me directly, as in Greg Gladman, and it's linked back to the Sales LP account. That's where we put most of the content up, rightly or wrongly.
Greg, what haven't we covered off that you wanted to cover off today?
Look, I think if we look at the audience that your sort of podcasts appeal to. I think the only other thing that we haven't covered off is that there are a lot of business owners who are trying to wear way too many hats, with the sales manager hat being one of those. So, I would just, encourage any business owners or CEOs that are trying to sort of wear that, fourth or fifth cap as a sales manager, just to have a really good look at how much time they're spending doing one-on-ones with the team, pipeline reviews, what are they doing around, joint calls out in the field to help to grow and challenge salespeople to perform at their best. And if you're not ticking those boxes, maybe put that on the agenda for the next addition to the team.
Lovely. Well, Greg, it's been a fascinating chat, learning about you, your business and sales, frankly, and why salespeople work and why they don't. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today, Greg.
Thank you, Brad, and thanks for having me on.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. If you'd be kind enough to leave a review for the podcast, that'd be really helpful to other like-minded entrepreneurs, and then we can grow our community. If you want to find out more about our guests, head over to evolutionpartners.com.au/podcast, where you can find show notes and other additional reading. Hope to see you back next week. Until then, keep thriving.